Imagine this. You discover something amazing. Something that changes everything we know about the universe. You are so excited. You want to share this discovery with the world. But then, powerful people tell you to be quiet. They say you are wrong. They say you are dangerous. They threaten to kill you if you do not take back your words. What would you do? Would you tell the truth and risk death? Or would you stay silent and stay safe? This is the story of Galileo Galilei. A man who looked at the sky and changed the world. A man who discovered incredible truths about our universe. But those truths made powerful people very angry. They forced him to say his discoveries were lies. They put him under house arrest. They threatened him with death. But even after all this, Galileo never stopped believing in science. He never stopped searching for truth. Today, we know that Galileo was right about everything. But in his time, telling the truth almost cost him his life. This is a story about courage. About curiosity. About the price of truth. Let's begin. Galileo Galilei was born on February 15, 1564. He was born in the city of Pisa, Italy. You might know Pisa because of its famous Leaning Tower. Yes, the tower that looks like it is falling over. Galileo's father was named Vincenzo Galilei. Vincenzo was a wool merchant. Galileo's mother was named Giulia Ammannati. The family was not rich, but they were not poor either. They were middle class. From the time he was a small child, Galileo showed special talents. He was curious about everything. He wanted to know how things worked. Galileo was also very artistic. He loved to paint. His paintings were beautiful. People said he could have been a professional painter if he wanted. But Galileo did not just love art. He also loved to build things. He made toys with his hands. He created clever little machines. Galileo also loved music. He played the organ. He played an instrument called the cithern. A cithern is like a guitar. So young Galileo was talented in many areas: art, building, and music. His father, Vincenzo, noticed how smart Galileo was. Vincenzo wanted his son to have a good career. He wanted Galileo to make more money than he did. So Vincenzo decided Galileo should become a doctor. In those days, doctors made good money. They were respected in society. So when Galileo was old enough, Vincenzo sent him to university. Galileo went to the University of Pisa to study medicine. But something unexpected happened. Galileo did not like medicine very much. He found it boring. What really excited him was mathematics and physics. He loved numbers. But his father wanted him to be a doctor, so Galileo tried to study medicine anyway. One day, when Galileo was 20 years old, something interesting happened. Galileo was in the Cathedral of Pisa. A cathedral is a big, beautiful church. He was attending a church service. It was probably quite boring for young Galileo. The priest was talking and talking. Galileo's mind started to wander. That means he stopped paying attention. He looked around the cathedral. It was a magnificent building with high ceilings. Suddenly, something caught his eye. A lamp was hanging from the ceiling on a long chain. The lamp was swinging back and forth. Most people would not think anything of this. A swinging lamp is not very interesting, right? But Galileo was fascinated. He watched the lamp carefully. He noticed something strange. When the lamp swung in a big arc, it moved fast. When the lamp swung in a small arc, it moved slow. But here was the strange part: both swings seemed to take the same amount of time. Galileo wanted to test this. But he did not have a watch. In 1584, watches did not exist yet. So Galileo used the only timer he had, his own heartbeat. He put his fingers on his wrist to feel his pulse. Then he counted. He counted how many heartbeats it took for the lamp to swing back and forth. He tested it again and again. And he discovered something amazing. No matter if the lamp swung in a big arc or a small arc, it took the same amount of time. The same number of heartbeats. This was incredible. Galileo had discovered something about pendulums. A pendulum is anything that swings back and forth, like that lamp. Galileo's discovery was this: a pendulum of a certain length always takes the same time to complete one swing, no matter how wide the swing is. Let me explain that in simpler words. Imagine you have a rope with a weight at the end. If you make it swing really wide, it moves fast. If you make it swing just a little bit, it moves slow. But both swings take the same amount of time. Many years later, people used Galileo's discovery to build pendulum clocks. These were the first clocks that could tell time accurately. But back then, Galileo was just a 20-year-old student who got bored in church and made an amazing discovery. This was the beginning of Galileo's scientific journey. After his discovery about pendulums, Galileo became even more interested in mathematics and physics. He found these subjects much more exciting than medicine. Finally, in 1585, Galileo made a big decision. He decided to quit his medical studies. Can you imagine? He told his father, "I am sorry, but I do not want to be a doctor. I want to study mathematics." His father was probably not happy about this. He had spent money sending Galileo to university. He wanted Galileo to have a good career as a doctor. But Galileo could not continue studying something he did not love. So he left the University of Pisa without finishing his degree. But Galileo did not stop learning. He continued studying mathematics on his own. He read books. He did experiments. He thought about problems. In the same year, 1585, Galileo got a job teaching mathematics. He taught at the Academy of Florence. Florence is another beautiful city in Italy. While teaching there, Galileo became known in scientific circles. Scientific circles means the community of scientists and scholars. Why did he become known? Because he invented something clever, a hydrostatic balance. A hydrostatic balance is a tool to measure the density of objects. Density means how heavy something is compared to its size. For example, a rock is more dense than a piece of wood of the same size. Galileo's invention was useful and clever. People started to notice this young man from Pisa. Around this time, Galileo started to think about gravity. In those days, everyone believed the ideas of Aristotle. Aristotle was an ancient Greek philosopher who lived more than 1,900 years before Galileo. Aristotle said many things about how the world works. One thing Aristotle said was, heavy objects fall faster than light objects. This seems to make sense, right? If you drop a rock in a feather, the rock hits the ground first. So Aristotle must be right, yes? But Galileo was not so sure. He started thinking about this problem. He started doing experiments. In 1589, Galileo published a study about gravity. In this study, he challenged Aristotle's ideas. Galileo said, two objects falling from the same height will hit the ground at the same time, even if one is heavier than the other. Wait, what? That sounds wrong, does it not? A heavy ball and a light ball fall at the same speed? But here is the key: Galileo said this is true if there is no air resistance. Air resistance means the air pushing against the falling object. A feather falls slowly because the air pushes against it. A heavy ball and a light ball fall at the same speed? But here is the key: Galileo said this is true if there is no air resistance. Air resistance means the air pushing against the falling object. A feather falls slowly because the air pushes against it. But if you remove the air, a feather and a rock fall at exactly the same speed. This was revolutionary. Revolutionary means it changed everything people believed. But many people did not like this. The professors at the university still believed Aristotle was always right. They thought Galileo was arrogant. Arrogant means thinking you are better or smarter than others. They thought, who is this young man who did not even finish his degree? How dare he say Aristotle was wrong? After Galileo published his study, the Grand Duke of Tuscany noticed him. The Grand Duke was impressed by Galileo's ideas. So he invited Galileo to teach mathematics at the University of Pisa. Galileo was only 25 years old. He was young to be a university professor. And remember, he did not even have a university degree. The other professors did not like him. They thought he was too young. They thought he was too bold. Bold means brave and confident, sometimes too confident. Galileo did not care what they thought. He kept questioning Aristotle's ideas. He kept doing experiments. He kept searching for truth. But this caused problems for Galileo. In 1591, after arguments and conflicts with other professors, Galileo lost his job at the University of Pisa. The other professors convinced the university to fire him. They did not like that he questioned Aristotle. They did not like his bold personality. So Galileo was unemployed. Unemployed means having no job. But Galileo's reputation as a brilliant mathematician was growing. Reputation means what people think about you. In 1592, the Senate of Venice heard about Galileo. They offered him a new job. He would teach mathematics at the University of Padua. Padua is a city near Venice in northern Italy. Galileo accepted the job. He moved to Padua. And this is where he spent the next 18 years of his life. These 18 years in Padua were very productive for Galileo. During this time, Galileo did important research in dynamics. Dynamics is the study of motion and forces. His research led to his famous law of motion. Galileo also tried to solve an important military problem. The military wanted to know, how can we predict where a cannonball will land? When you fire a cannon, the ball flies through the air in a curve. This curve is called a trajectory. If you can predict the trajectory, you can aim better. Galileo studied this problem. He did experiments. He used mathematics. He figured out how to calculate trajectories. This was very important for the military. But it was also important for science. Galileo was learning how objects move through the air. In 1609, Galileo heard exciting news. A man in Holland had invented a new device. His name was Zacharias Janssen. Janssen had created something that could make distant objects look closer. Today we call this device a telescope. When Galileo heard about this invention, he was very excited. He thought, I can build one of these. And I can make it even better. So in 1610, Galileo started building his own telescope. He worked hard. He experimented with different lenses. Lenses are pieces of curved glass that bend light. Finally, Galileo succeeded. He built a telescope that was much better than the one from Holland. Galileo's telescope could magnify things 20 times. Magnify means make something look bigger. If you looked at something 20 meters away, it would look like it was only 1 meter away. This was incredible technology for that time. But Galileo did not just use his telescope to look at things on Earth. He pointed it at the sky. And what he saw changed everything. When Galileo looked at the sky through his telescope, he was amazed. Discovery 1: the moon has mountains and valleys. Before Galileo, people thought the moon was a perfect, smooth sphere. But when Galileo looked at the moon through his telescope, he saw it was not smooth at all. It had mountains. It looked like Earth, with rough terrain. This was shocking. Discovery 2: the sun has spots. Galileo also looked at the sun, which is dangerous and you should never do. He saw dark spots on the sun. We call these sunspots today. This meant the sun was not perfect either. It had marks and imperfections. Discovery 3: Jupiter has moons. This was perhaps Galileo's most important discovery. When he looked at Jupiter, he saw 4 small points of light near it. At first, he thought they were stars. But night after night, he noticed these points of light moved. They orbited around Jupiter. They were not stars. They were moons. Jupiter had 4 moons going around it. Today we call them the Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. This discovery was revolutionary. Why? Because it proved that not everything orbits around Earth. These 4 moons were Discovery 4, Saturn has rings. When Galileo looked at Saturn, he saw something strange. Saturn looked like it had 2 handles or ears. Galileo's telescope was not powerful enough to see clearly. But he was seeing Saturn's rings. Later, with better telescopes, scientists confirmed this. Discovery 5, Venus has phases. Galileo also studied Venus. He noticed that Venus changes shape, just like our moon. Sometimes Venus looks full and round. Sometimes it looks like a crescent, like a banana. These are called phases. This was important because it proved Venus orbits the Sun, not the Earth. All these discoveries were incredible. But they also created a big problem for Galileo. In 1610, Galileo published a book. The book was called The Starry Messenger in English. In this book, Galileo described all his amazing discoveries. The mountains on the moon. The spots on the sun. The moons of Jupiter. The rings of Saturn. The phases of Venus. But Galileo also said something else in this book. Something dangerous. He said these discoveries supported the heliocentric theory. Heliocentric means sun-centered. Let me explain this. For thousands of years, people believed that Earth was the center of the universe. They believed the sun, moon, planets, and stars all revolved around Earth. This is called the geocentric theory. Geocentric means Earth-centered. This idea came from the ancient Greek astronomer Ptolemy. But in 1543, a man named Nicholas Copernicus proposed a different idea. Copernicus said, "What if Earth is not the center? What if the sun is the center?" Copernicus suggested that Earth and all the other planets orbit around the sun. This was the heliocentric theory. When Copernicus first proposed this, most people ignored it. It seemed crazy. It seemed to contradict the Bible. So the church said the heliocentric theory was wrong. But Galileo's discoveries supported Copernicus. If Jupiter has moons orbiting it, then not everything orbits Earth. If Venus has phases, it must be orbiting the sun. Galileo could see the evidence in the sky. The heliocentric theory was correct. But saying this was dangerous. Very dangerous. The Catholic Church was very powerful in Italy at this time. The Church controlled not just religion, but also education and science. The Inquisition's job was to find and punish people who taught ideas against church doctrine. Doctrine means official teaching. When Galileo published his book supporting the heliocentric theory, the church was not happy. They said, "Galileo, you are teaching ideas that contradict the Bible. You must stop." At first, the warnings were gentle. Church officials talked to Galileo privately. They said, "Please do not teach that Earth moves around the sun. This contradicts Scripture." Scripture means the Bible. Galileo tried to argue. He said, "But I can see it with my telescope. The evidence is clear." The church said, "We do not care about your telescope. The Bible is the ultimate truth." In 1616, the church officially declared the heliocentric theory to be heresy. Heresy means a belief that goes against official church teaching. Being accused of heresy was very serious. People who were found guilty of heresy could be executed. Executed means killed as punishment. The church told Galileo, "You are forbidden from teaching or defending the heliocentric theory." Galileo had to agree. He had no choice. But he did not give up. For many years, Galileo stayed quiet. He did not publicly teach the heliocentric theory. But he never stopped believing it was true. In secret, Galileo wrote a book. He worked on it for years. In 1632, he finally published it. The book was called Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. In this book, Galileo created a fictional dialogue. A dialogue means a conversation. In the book, 3 characters discuss astronomy. One character defends the geocentric theory, Earth is the center. Another character defends the heliocentric theory, Sun is the center. The third character is neutral and asks questions. Galileo wrote the book cleverly. He made the character defending the geocentric theory seem foolish. This character's name was Simplicio, which sounds like simple or simpleton. A simpleton is a foolish person. Meanwhile, the character defending the heliocentric theory seemed smart and reasonable. It was obvious that Galileo believed the heliocentric theory was correct. When the church saw this book, they were furious. They said, "Galileo, you disobeyed us. We told you not to teach this theory." In 1633, Galileo was ordered to appear before the Inquisition in Rome. This was the trial that would change his life. Imagine being 69 years old and being forced to travel to Rome. Galileo was old and his health was not good. But he had no choice. When he arrived in Rome, he was brought before the Inquisition. They accused him of heresy. They said, "You taught that Earth moves around the sun. This contradicts the Bible. This is heresy." Galileo tried to defend himself. He said, "I was just presenting both sides of the argument. I was not saying which one was right." But the Inquisition did not believe him. They said, "Your book clearly shows you believe Earth moves. This is heresy." Galileo was in great danger. If he was found guilty of heresy, he could be executed. The Inquisition threatened him. They said, "Galileo, you must confess that you were wrong. You must publicly renounce your beliefs." Renounce means to say you no longer believe something. They wanted Galileo to say, "I was wrong. Earth does not move. The sun moves around Earth." Galileo thought about his options. If he refused, he could be killed. If he agreed, he would have to lie about what he knew was true. Finally, Galileo made his decision. He chose to stay alive. On June 22, 1633, Galileo knelt before the Inquisition. He read a statement. In the statement, he said, "I, Galileo Galilei, renounce, curse, and detest my errors. I believe that the sun is the center and that Earth moves. But I was wrong. I now understand that Earth is the center and does not move. It was a lie." Galileo knew it was a lie. The Inquisition knew he knew it was a lie. But it did not matter. They had forced him to say it publicly. There is a famous legend about what happened next. The legend says that after Galileo read his statement, he whispered quietly, "And yet it moves." "Eppur si muove" in Italian. Meaning, I said Earth does not move, but actually, it does move. We do not know if this legend is true. But many people like to believe it is. Because even though Galileo was forced to lie, he never stopped believing the truth. After the trial, the Inquisition decided Galileo's punishment. They did not execute him. But they did not let him go free either. Instead, they sentenced him to house arrest. House arrest means you must stay in your home and cannot leave. Galileo was sent to his house in Arcetri. Arcetri is a small town near Florence. He would spend the rest of his life there. He was forbidden from teaching. He was forbidden from publishing new books. He was forbidden from discussing his ideas publicly. Basically, they silenced him. But even in house arrest, Galileo did not stop working. He could not study astronomy anymore because the church forbid it. So he focused on other areas of physics. He wrote about motion and mechanics. He developed new methods of scientific research based on experimentation. This was important because before Galileo, many scientists just thought about ideas. They did not test them. Galileo said, "We must test our ideas. We must do experiments. Only then can we know what is true." This approach became the foundation of modern science. Even though Galileo was under house arrest, he continued contributing to science. As the years passed, Galileo's health got worse. In 1638, Galileo went blind. Blind means he could not see anymore. This was terrible for a man who had spent his life observing the world. The man who looked through a telescope and saw the moons of Jupiter. The man who saw the mountains on the moon. Now he could not see anything at all. But even blind, Galileo continued working. He dictated his thoughts to assistants. Dictate means to speak words for someone else to write down. He continued thinking about science until the very end. On January 8, 1642, Galileo died. He died in his house in Arcetri. He was 77 years old. He died from fever and heart palpitations. Heart palpitations means irregular heartbeats. Galileo died under house arrest. He died as a convicted heretic. The church did not allow him to be buried in the main part of the church with honors. For many years after his death, his books were still banned by the church. But Galileo's ideas did not die with him. Other scientists continued his work. They built better telescopes. They made more discoveries. And slowly, everyone realized Galileo had been right all along. For more than 350 years, the Catholic Church maintained that Galileo was wrong. But in 1992, something happened. On October 31, 1992, Pope John Paul II made an announcement. Pope John Paul II was the leader of the Catholic Church at that time. He said, "The Church was wrong. Galileo was right. We apologize." After 359 years, the Church finally admitted their mistake. They admitted that Galileo should never have been tried for heresy. They admitted that the heliocentric theory is correct. Earth does move around the sun. This apology came too late for Galileo. He had been dead for 350 years. But it was an important moment. It showed that even powerful institutions can admit when they are wrong. Today, more than 380 years after Galileo's death, his impact is still everywhere. When you use GPS on your phone, you are using satellite technology that relies on understanding how planets move. Galileo helped us understand that. When you watch a rocket launch into space, that is possible because of principles Galileo discovered. When scientists study the stars with powerful telescopes, they are continuing the work Galileo started. There is even a space mission named after him. In 1989, NASA launched a spacecraft called Galileo. This spacecraft traveled to Jupiter and studied the 4 moons that Galileo discovered. Those moons are still called the Galilean moons in his honor. Galileo's name is also used in physics. There is a unit of measurement called the Gal named after him. There are craters on the Moon and Mars named after Galileo. Everywhere we look in science, we see Galileo's influence. The boy who watched a swinging lamp in a cathedral. The young man who challenged the ideas of Aristotle. The scientist who built a telescope and discovered new worlds. The old man who was forced to lie about what he knew was true. Galileo Galilei lived an extraordinary life. He faced opposition from powerful people. He was threatened with death. He spent his final years under house arrest. But he never stopped searching for truth. He never stopped believing in science. And because of him, we understand the universe better. So what is the message of Galileo's life? It is this: never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for truth. Have the courage to believe what you discover, even if others disagree. Test your ideas. Be curious. Be brave. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, subscribe to this channel. We tell stories of people who changed the world. Stories to help you learn English. And stories to help you believe in yourself. See you in the next video.